Kinesiology 223, Chapter 9. This is book presentation number 9, talking about the relationship between cohesion and performance. So in the book, they use an example and they cite a couple things here in terms of like on an intuitive level, you might assume that the higher level of a team's cohesion, the greater success. One would think that that is in fact the case. And there is a positive relationship in the studies that show that. And they talk about how using sport teams, including like 10,000 athletes, more than 1,000 teams, Karen and colleagues found moderate to large cohesion and performance effects, and they found the strongest effects were in sport teams. So I'm left to kind of question, not the book, but just openly blurt a question out. You're left to question if it's like the desire for teamwork and cohesion that created the relationship, did that cause a person to become involved with that particular sport, or a person who maybe excelled at a particular sport ended up staying in the sport because of the cohesion, and the cohesion is a byproduct, right? So you can kind of play around with that statement and say, did the person enjoy the cohesion, they stayed with the sport, and as a result they got better and so forth, and thereafter everybody got better, or were they great at a sport and they needed to be in an environment where everybody else was really good, and the cohesion that you found was the competitiveness that was amongst the athletes. So it's kind of fun to play around with what they're premising here in this first little paragraph, but I think it has its place when you start talking about athletes and where they play and the degree or level at which their competition is. With task demands, excuse me, you have to consider the task structure and demands when you look at the relationship between cohesion and performance. If there is or are no task demands, you'll probably have reduced cohesion, because really at the end of the day there's really no challenge and no reason to come together to try to like achieve a task, and there will be no cohesion as a result. The book puts in place that there's a bit of a continuum here in terms of activities or tasks. One is interactive, the other is coactive. In interactive sports, teammates come together, they work, and they have plans, and they have strategies, and they coordinate their actions to be able to win a game. And when you look at coactive sports, it's less to do with the team component, it's more to do with being more individual. And you look at like different sports, like a sport like football would be very, very much interactive, right? A sport like golf, or maybe even a sport like, as they note here in the book, bowling, where it's a singular type thing, it's a little different animal. It becomes a little bit hybrid when you have like track, you go out and compete in your event, you earn points for your team, or even wrestling where you go and compete one-on-one against somebody, but where you place earns you points for the team overall, right? So there's different ways to look at this. And with team building strategies, whether it's a team sport or an individual sport, or even more specifically, if it's a coactive sport or an interactive sport, team building strategies and techniques, they increase cohesiveness, because the team building itself allows groups of people within a team environment to come together, and it helps in terms of like defining the role and giving greater guidance or vision to role clarity, and really accepting what a role is. And so the concept you have here is you're using team building strategies to help your people understand where they are in the context of the group. Now, here's the thing. I would push back on this, because if you have athletes who are exceptional at their particular sport and playing a particular position, and you do team building activities that have nothing to do with their position, you might find that they might not be as much of a teamer, right? Because they don't bring as much to the table, so therefore they're not as vested in the process, and it takes away from their ability or their identity of who they are. Just saying, when you do team building stuff, realize you might take people outside of their comfort zone, and part of being in their comfort zone is the fact that they excel at a particular skill or task within a particular sport. And so the original question, like we floated out in the beginning, does cohesion lead to increased performance, or does performance success lead to cohesion. And the book lists this as a bit of a cause and effect relationship, and the direction of causality refers to whether cohesion leads performance or vice versa. And what they talk about is this kind of like virtuous cycle, and I like this in terms of really kind of wrapping up a concept nice and tight here. And the idea that, cohesion leads to performance, that is, cohesion measures precede performance, and then they go to number 2 where performance leads to cohesion, that is, performance measures precede cohesion. And what I would say is this, again, it depends on your environment. If you're with a bunch of high achievers, elite level players, and you're all working towards the same goal, your cohesion will be pretty high, and a lot of your cohesiveness will be based off of the individual performances as well as team performances of your athletes. So the book kind of provides their final opinion relating to the causality between the two. And they state, in summary, the authors, they state that the relationship is circular. And this, I would point out that as a coach, it's your job to really kind of push this virtuous cycle and really push the agenda to have a culture where you're trying to increase performance, increase cohesion, and as a result, you constantly have your athletes wanting to do better and supporting each other in the endeavor to do better. So in a circular relationship, the effect on performance, the effect of performance on cohesion appears to be stronger than that of cohesion on performance for teams in general. So I like how they sum this up in this last little paragraph here. And I would urge you to take a look at it. All right, so you have other contributing factors to team cohesion. You have team satisfaction, conformity, adherence, social support, communication, stability, group goals, and gender. And I'm going to jump into the next presentation.